guys. Welcome back to Previa podcast. It is Sarah
and Whitney.
We have such a special guest today, Liesel teen, A.K.A. Mommy.labornurse. She is our favorite Instagram go-to get us ready for labor and delivery. And personally, I love most when you kick the mother-in-law out of the room reels. That
I do a lot of those.
That
common
speaks to my
theme.
soul.
Those are fun.
Yes. But we are so happy to have you on today. And thank you for being with us.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me. I'm excited to be here. I'm glad you like my mother-in-law reels. A lot of people do.
I think,
and thinking about the baby daddy is a good one too.
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah. The one too, it's like dumb ways to die. That's like when the dad's like, oh, my back hurts. And you're just like,
I've been laboring for 24 hours.
Gave birth to a human.
It is a dumb way to die. A very dumb way to die.
Yeah.
It's very
just
preventable.
Zip it.
Yes. Well, I'm sure you have tons of stories, but what we really, me and Whitney sent this back to each other when you posted this a while back. It was about your own postpartum depression journey. And
yes.
it was when you were saying that you started medication, that you recognized that you needed help, you wanted help, and you got help. Mm-hmm. And that's where we come into play. That's our platform, is maternal mental health. So if you wouldn't mind just kind of sharing with us that journey led you up to that moment.
Yeah, the reel that you're talking about was one that I did. I took it wasn't a picture, it was like a video. There was this trend going around where it was just this sound where you keep turning your head and, it's like a time lapse kind of thing. And so I took a video right when I think it maybe was the first day that I started medication, or like very early on, when I decided that I wanted to, or not decided, but I realized that I needed some help. And I just kept turning my head, and I, would do that every few days, take a little video like that until I was really feeling my medication kick in. And you could really tell, like in my face, what a difference from the beginning versus like once I was actually feeling good on my meds. And I will say most of these medications, at least the one that I was on, it's not like an immediate thing. Like you don't take this medication and then the next day you feel okay. It sometimes can take weeks. Sometimes it can take, a couple months because you might have to change medications. But I was lucky enough that I got on one and I got on the right dose. I only had to adjust the dose once. So it was probably a month, that little time lapse reel that I did.
Appreciate that. So what thoughts were you feeling, or like what made you say enough? Because we hear from a lot of moms, they really struggle between, is this how I'm supposed to be feeling, versus no, this is not normal motherhood, right? Or motherhood is hard, but when you have postpartum depression, anxiety, OCD, it feels impossible. So they kind of get lost in that gray area.
Yeah, no, totally. I think I realized it because with my first one, I have a 6-year-old. He just turned 6. I can't believe that he just turned 6. It's crazy that he's that old now. But I had him and I really struggled with anxiety with him mainly. And I didn't really do anything about it. I mean, I would just kind of have circling thoughts, and I was constantly worried about just him and his health, and if he was going to die or if he was going to, I would go through like a circle of, he would be on the ground crawling, and I would think like, oh my gosh, he's going to pick up something on the ground that he is going to ingest. I'm going to have to take him to the emergency room, and he's going to have surgery. And then this, so it's like, it goes in that circle like that.
There's definitely some intrusive thoughts coming in.
Yes. Oh my gosh. I really, really struggled with intrusive thoughts, and intrusive thoughts are, to some degree normal, right? Everybody kind of has like a weird thought come in every once in a while, but my practitioner said to me, if these intrusive thoughts are the kind of thoughts that they are affecting your daily life, which they were, that's when it's time to get some help. And this was with my second one. Now, I was, like I said, didn't do anything with my first one. Eventually he got older and there was just kind of less to worry about. And I think that's kind of what got me through, but I definitely really struggled with him. It was really debilitating for a while with him. And I didn't really understand what was going on with him, even though, I was a labor and delivery nurse at that time. I had been one for about 2.5 years, but we don't do a lot of education ourselves on the postpartum experience. So I kind of felt like I was just, a regular, like normal first time mom who doesn't have any knowledge about, what I'm going through. So I didn't even really understand to its core what postpartum anxiety was too. And that's really what I feel like was going on the first time. So kind of got through that. I started seeing a therapist before I got pregnant with Ryland. And I'm glad I got with her before that because I was able to kind of seek out help once I realized that I really needed help with my second one. I kind of just had that ongoing care. So I had Ryland and I knew that I had this history of having postpartum anxiety with my first one. So I did all the things. I prepped the meals. I, had help like childcare set up for 3 months. Like I had a good postpartum plan and I did a lot of education on breastfeeding because that was another thing with my first one. I think that kind of set me back. I was constantly thinking like, he's not getting enough, he's crying and I didn't understand cluster feeding a whole lot. So I did a lot more education on breastfeeding just in general, not just to prepare for Ryland, but kind of once I started Mommy.labornurse and everything. So I had a great postpartum plan with him and got through the first 3 months. Honestly, like the first 3 months of his life were great. I mean, I kept telling my therapist, I'm waiting for the ball to drop. Like, when's the ball going to drop and I'm going to feel crummy, And I just kept feeling good. And so I was good, for 3 months. And then I went back to work and I started working. I was at the hospital only once every other week. So not a whole lot there, but I was, working. I had a little office. I didn't have a home office at that point, but I had a little like office that I would go into to do mommy labor nurse stuff. And so I was just getting busy. And Rylan was about 3.5, 4 months going through that 4-month sleep regression. Things were just getting a little bit harder. And really, he was a really good nurser at first, but once he was like 3 months old, he realized that he had an older brother that he just wanted to watch all the time while I was nursing. And so he was so distracted. And I did all of the things to try and keep him focused while I was nursing, go in a dark room and not have anybody around or anything. And he would do okay with that. But it was like, I have a 3.5-year-old, like, I don't want to go and like just feed my baby and
conducive to having multiples to have to lock yourself in a dark room for a feeding every 3 hours.
No, it's not. That's okay for your first baby, but I was at home the days that I was at home with him. My husband would work and like I can't just, I'm like, I don't want to just put him in front of the TV and just go and like, it wasn't working. So that was building up a whole lot of stress too, of just, this.
Ryland was a COVID baby too, correct?
He was a COVID baby. So that's a whole other element. That definitely added to it because you can't really go anywhere and do anything. Mm-hmm. You have these online resources. I remember Walter was in preschool, but he was out for preschool because of COVID. So he was home.
Like COVID.
Yeah, he was home all the time. And they would send these little videos to have them watch like every day, like little preschool videos. It was actually cute that they would try. Yeah. But I mean, that would only hold his attention for so long. It's not like it's not the same thing as dropping my kid off at preschool.
Exactly.
So it started to get really tough. 3.5, 4 months. I was just kind of feeling it a little bit more and getting a lot more short with everyone and started to not feel like myself, just was angry all the time. It kind of turned into this rage thing and the intrusive thoughts were kind of starting back up again. And I was being really hard on myself too, of just struggling with the breastfeeding thing and working more at that point too. And I remember kind of what the switch was for me was I was upstairs with Ryland because he was nursing and I was in a dark room and my husband was home at this time and I was nursing him. I was already kind of like having trouble with him in the dark, I remember. And I think there was something that happened with Walter. My first one is Walter. Before that I was already kind of like on edge and kind of tense. And I told Walter, the rule is like if mommy goes upstairs and is like nursing Rylan, like really try and stay out. Cause like if you come in, then it really interrupts him and he can't it's just really hard for him to eat. And so he knew that, but he's 3.5. Okay. So we were upstairs and he kind of ran upstairs, came into the room. And like I said, I was already on edge and he like came into the room and he was like, hey, blah, 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 blah. And like Rylan, of course went off and I got so angry. I just screamed. I was like, get out of here. Like, I told you, you're not supposed to come up here, bro. And I just screamed at him. And I remember like it even gets me emotional, like thinking about it. Cause I remember his face, he was like scared and he just ran out of the room. Like I was like scary to him. And I, of course, immediately felt the shame and like I immediately started crying like, oh my gosh, I can't believe I just screamed my head off at my child. And so kind of when that happened, I'd been having little things, not to that extreme yet, but like little rage moments here and there. But when that happened, I was like, I really felt like I couldn't control that. And I think this is kind of a sign that I need to like go and talk to somebody about this. So I talked to my husband and, obviously he agreed with me. So I went to see my practitioner. I called him and he's been my family doctor for, since Walter was a year old. I switched and we love him and he's really understanding of just like everything. And so he sees my whole family. So I saw him and explained to him kind of what's going on. And I got on a medication, started that. And like I said, it took a few weeks for it to kind of kick in. I was still having moments where I would get really ragey and really angry. I remember I would be trying to get my key in the front door and it wouldn't go in, right when I needed it to go in. And I would just be like, like I'm trying to get in with the kids, and it would be like that, or getting them out the door if we were like going to the park or something would just feel so like, it would just feel so stressful and so hard. And I would just yell and just be so angry all the time. And so eventually I remember what kind of switched was there was one day that it was the morning. We were going out to the morning and I think Walter was back. Yeah, he was back in preschool at this point. He had just kind of started back. So like I said, every morning or every time we would go out, it was just stressful getting out of the door. And I remember one morning I like drove off and I was like, I didn't get angry. That's like the first day I haven't gotten angry in a while. I'm like, wait a second, what? Like what just, and so then you just kind of start to realize, oh, wait a second, this is starting to feel a little bit easier. And I'm starting to look at my children and not think about all these other things that I have to do or just be angry. Like you start to actually enjoy really being around them and seeing, it was a slow kind of transition like that. But I do remember that moment. And then it just kind of got better from there. And I really feel for people who are going through that because you really feel like you're completely alone and it feels horrible.
Thank you so much for sharing that.
Yeah.
That I resonate. And we talked about this a lot on other episodes. I mean, Whitney, with my first, I suffered extreme anxiety, which turned into true postpartum depression where I was suicidal at 4 months postpartum. And people in 4 months. So I was resonating when you were saying like that 4 months, people kind of, I think we always say people leave, like your care maybe is there for the first couple of months and then they kind of leave. And then you're right, like the sleep regression and you're going back to work. And if you have older children, then that they realize baby's still here, right? Like that transition's hard for them too. And with Will, my oldest, the 4 months was literally my pit. And people looked at me kind of like, why is this happening now to you? Right. And I think that was like a huge lack of education just in general of people. And then with my second, James, I relate so much when you said rage. And I've shared this with Whitney on other episodes. It's just that anger. And you're like, I've never been that person. And you're ashamed to say that, like, I lost my mind and screamed over the keys. But when you said the keys, like, I remember I couldn't find the remote one day postpartum with James. And I was like red and like I saw red, I felt red. And there's a lot of shame. So we try to talk about this, right? Because like moms, they feel like I can't say this to my husband. I can't say this to my friend because no one's saying they feel this. So thank you so much for just using your platform to be honest, because half the battle we hear from our moms, and I had a mom say this to me last week, I never knew about it till I heard you say it.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's exactly the kind of messages that I get when I share anything postpartum or pregnancy mental health related. Is I talk about my experience, or I will share a DM that someone has sent to me about something they were going through. And I get so many messages of people being like, oh my God, like this is like not just normal.
This isn't
like
normal postpartum.
Yeah. Like, wait a second. I'm supposed to be like happy. I'm supposed to not be crying or be angry all the time. Wait a second. What? It's sad to me because there is that lack of education, but it also is happy because I'm like, okay, well, great. I'm glad that I can be that one switch for you.
And I think it's huge for moms to know the differences between baby blues and postpartum depression, anxiety, OCD, psychosis, if it does get to that point, what your risk factors are and the timeline for it. Because baby blues, and you probably see this in the labor and delivery unit because of that hormone crash that happens so quickly.
Yes.
But the baby blues should only last 2 to 3 weeks tops.
Yep.
Whereas most moms, we're not going to have that onset of anxiety and depression till we're out of the hospital and we're home and we're in the nitty gritty of it.
Yep.
So we're probably not going to see that onset of anxiety, depression till a month postpartum, 2, 3, 4 months, even up until 9 months postpartum. I've had people start therapy with me and be like, nobody told me that I was going to have it at 9 months.
Mm-hmm.
I thought I was in the clear.
Mm-hmm.
When actually, we are susceptible to it up until a year postpartum with our kids. So I do think having that education of time frames and what to expect is a big deal. And I think that's one way that moms need help, but I feel like they get gypped, for lack of a better way to say it, by providers in some form or fashion.
Yeah. Yeah. No, totally. It's something that makes me very angry that there's that gap.
Absolutely.
And that's the whole purpose. Yeah. I mean, we say it all the time, right? Like, if you think of basic terms, because I was a nurse before doing Previa Alliance and Previa podcast. So I did bedside nurse. I was adult. So I was never mom, baby, NICU. But like you said, that experience, I think healthcare providers, therapists, nurses, doctors, paramedics, pharmacists, whatever, we feel like we're educated, right? And like we should know these things to some point. So I think that section of population, like we, A, have a hard time asking for help. B, we treat ourselves a lot, or, we think we have it. And then the shame that comes along with it of saying like, I thought I should know better, or people think. I've had a lot of situations with our Previa women where their professions are healthcare, or maybe it's higher education. And I've had providers say they should know better when they're struggling. And that's a huge, like, that really lights a fire on us, is because it's like we have to treat maternal mental health the same as we do heart attack and stroke, which is like we have to tell everybody the signs and symptoms. We have to tell everybody how to get help, what is normal versus not. Like, so it's because mental health is health, and moms, we just literally, no one tells us. And it's like this train coming at us, and we're like, we don't even have a chance to get off the tracks.
I know.
Exactly. That resonates with me, having been, a labor and delivery social worker for so long. And then I had postpartum anxiety with my first that was so deeply rooted in a fear of SIDS. And I thought, well, you have all the education. You literally talk to moms about this. Like, why are you struggling? And there was that guilt of, I'm not invincible just because I have information.
Right. No, totally. And I think there's a lot of nurses or healthcare providers I know that have said that they don't even like to say that they're in healthcare when they go and see a provider, because you feel like you get treated differently. And I definitely feel that too. I try to not say that I'm a nurse if I'm going to the doctor's office.
I do the same thing. And my husband's a physician, so I certainly don't say any of that until, and people, I've said, we've been very open of our postpartum struggles and journeys. And I've had a lot of people be like, I would never think that would happen to you. Or like, did Bill, my husband, did he not catch it? And I'm like, he didn't know either. It's just, no one sat us down during pregnancy and said, let's talk realistically about postpartum mental health. Like, this is like, let's teach you how to recognize, like, I would wake up and I'd be like, oh my God, is he, if I could sleep, which I a lot of times couldn't with Will, because I was like Whitney, I was fearing he would die if I slept. And then
Mhm.
I had a lot of intrusive circling thoughts. And, I remember one time I was staring and like almost like I wanted to put my hand on his chest to count his breaths.
Mhm.
And Bill was like, "What are you doing?" And I'm just like, he's okay. But I'm like, I don't know he's okay. Like, I feel like he's going to die. And he was like, we've now had conversations. He's like, I didn't know that was something that like new moms should not do to the point you were doing. Right. Like,
Yeah.
he was like, I just thought this. And so I think it's a whole societal issue that's failing moms. It's just, and it's shame. And like people, I remember like in my family, there was a story about a great aunt that went away post baby. And it's like now we know she had postpartum depression because we're educated, right? But it's like this has been happening to moms for so many generations. And like typically their village used to come in and like the other aunts or would come in with a grandma and would raise the child or help the mom out. But now we know what it is, but like we don't have the traditional villages. So
No, we
we
don't.
sit at
Yeah.
home and we think we're failing, or we think all these moms have it together but us. And then we don't even know there's a name to what we're feeling, and there's treatment and there's help, and we will get better. So that's our whole platform. And it's, so when we saw you doing that, we're like, we have to have her on because, and you are frontline with your reach to these moms
Mhm.
and from as a nurse and on your platform. And we always say if like no one, we can't assume anybody's going to tell these moms, so we have to tell them.
Right.
And I think we're just really grateful that you're choosing that to advocate for moms.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, I feel grateful that I'm in the position that I'm in. And I know one thing that I do on a personal level with my friends now that I've kind of been through what I've been through is it's so funny. So whenever one of my friends has a baby, and I have a lot of friends who have babies all the time,
Mhm.
all the time feels like somebody is like pregnant and having a baby.
Stage of life that we're in.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. You're
Yeah.
just saying it's just, yeah, that's just what's going on. I will set I have an iPhone, and I'll set a little reminder on my phone in the reminders app. Like when she delivers, I'll set it 4 months from that time. And it says, hey, text your friend about how she's doing. How's your mental
That is a
health doing?
great idea.
I
Right?
love that.
That is
I
I'm
a
love
like,
that.
I
great
feel like everybody just needs to start doing that. Cause I think if we just checked
Yes.
in on each other a little more often, that would
Yes.
really help.
And I mean, because we're moms, so let's be real, like our brains are pulled in a million directions. I'm not going to remember that on my own,
Yep.
but it doesn't take but 30 seconds to set a reminder. And then when that reminder pops up, do a quick text of, hey, just checking on you, wanted to see how you're doing. Like,
Yeah.
I
And
love
especially at 4 months, like
Mhm.
that.
I think you get all those messages in the first few weeks, and then people are asking to see the baby, or people are asking, how's breastfeeding going? Or if that, but nobody's really texting you saying, like, how are you feeling? Like, how is your mental health?
Mm-hmm.
So
Well,
important. I try to have conversations like that.
Yeah.
and I think too, so often people are almost scared to ask about the other
Yeah.
person's mental health because they're like, well, maybe they're going to feel like I'm accusing them or judging them or whatever.
Yeah.
However, if you have that close enough relationship with somebody, that's when you can say, hey, I'm doing a mental health check with you. I just want to see how you're doing. Is the baby sleeping? Are you sleeping? Are you eating? Things like that. And if it's somebody you know and trust, then you can have that conversation with them, judgment-free zone.
Right. And maybe it's not even that they are open enough to share kind of what's going on, but it's that little cue in their brain that, like, oh, hey, somebody's reaching out and asking me,
Me as the
and
mom is cared
me is
for.
right, exactly.
That's so
And
important.
that's
And they'll know, right? So maybe it's not that conversation there, but I would remember, hey, Whitney texted me. And
yeah.
then I could be like, she's my safe person, right? And that's
Right.
and that's we tell this to our women all the time, is like kind of identify a safe person or someone that's you're open with, that's been there, that you can text and say, this is how I'm feeling. Did you feel this way?
Yeah.
Or I had this moment with my child today, right? And that's that safe person to say, I think we really need to talk about this a little bit more.
Mhm.
Or we teach all the time. It's like people will say, okay, well, I was told postpartum depression is sad. Okay,
Right.
yes, but let's give you a real life example. Okay,
Mm.
let's say things you used to love
Mhm.
you to do, you don't want to do it. even if you're doing it, you don't feel that love, you don't feel that joy. Like, let's talk about anxiety. Okay. Are you worried because your school just shut down because of COVID? Okay. We all are kind of feeling this worried. But are
Yeah.
you seeing your child then into the NICU and then dying and then you're spiraling, right? It's like, so we really try to dig in. It's like signs and symptoms are great. We all need to know 'em, but like, let's talk real life examples. So, like, my husband would have known she should not been having to put her hand on his chest and count them and track that, or obsessively count the ounces of breast milk
Yep.
that she is giving him and keep a table. And if it's 1 ounce different than yesterday, she sends a spiral that she's not doing enough.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Well, and especially if you go through a traumatic delivery like you
Oh,
did,
yeah.
Sarah, twice, I would say that you're more susceptible to having those spiraling intrusive thoughts because you've lived the spiraling intrusive event. You've lived that worst case scenario. So who's to say you wouldn't have another worst case scenario experience? And
Yeah.
so, for those moms that have been there, that have lived through those traumas, realize that your intrusive thoughts come from a place of concern and protection, and they're founded and valid. But, when we go down that rabbit hole of worst case scenarioing, then we have to say, okay, well, where am I at now? Do I have anything to lead me to believe we're going to go down that path?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I wish I would have. The biggest thing I tell everyone is if I could, if someone could, if pre-pregnant Sarah could have talked to, pregnant Sarah, it would be like, get into therapy now during pregnancy. And
Yes.
then we're such a huge advocacy of just saying, get into it. Everybody needs a therapist. Okay. Therapists have therapists. We say
I
that
know.
too.
I
I
do.
know.
But like pregnant women, we really need to get in there. And, it's a US task force recommendation in our Previa Alliance company, like that. If you have a risk factor, we offer connection to maternal mental health therapy for you just based on a risk factor. Cause we know it's studied, it's evidence-based, and like everybody needs
Yeah.
these coping skills. Everybody needs someone to help them process the day to day. And like that's one of my biggest things I always am just telling moms. It's like, this is, even if you don't have postpartum depression, postpartum anxiety, motherhood's going to knock you in a way of your identity. You're going to have to change relationships. You're going to have to change how you work. It's a change. You're not going to be the same person. You need a safe space to process that. So we're very huge therapy. So we love when you talk about therapy. We love when you talk about the truths of, postpartum. And is there anything that you could tell the moms who are pregnant right now, who they're just like, I had a traumatic delivery twice, and I kind of felt like advocacy of my care at that moment was hard. Do you have anything that they can lean on their nurses or like help them kind of have empowerment for their birth with their mental health of like processing that?
Yeah. So, what I like to tell moms first and foremost, before you even get into the labor and delivery room, is let's really make sure that you're number one with a practice and a provider who you have a good rapport with, and you feel like you're going to your prenatal visits and they're actually listening to your concerns if you bring up concerns, and they just are in line with what you think your birth experience is going to be like. For instance, if you are thinking, I kind of want to have a water birth, I want to go a little, I want to go natural, not get medication or anything, but maybe you're with a practice that their C-section rate is really high, they don't have any tubs at this hospital. When you talk to them about induction, they say, oh yeah, we just induce this point, or there's all these like little tiny red flags that show up. I like to tell moms that, hey, like it's okay, even if you're 30 some weeks, usually, it depends on insurance situations, obviously, but even at the end of pregnancy, you can always go and change providers. And it is so, so, so important that you're with a provider that you trust, that you feel like hears you, because that makes such a difference. There are a lot of things that you can do, but if that relationship isn't there, that can really make a huge difference in the birth experience, the postpartum experience, your whole motherhood experience.
I love that. And
Yeah.
that's something moms feel like they have to stick with a certain provider. They're like,
Yeah.
oh, is it an awkward breakup? No, it's not. It's just like with therapists, we say this all the time. You may mesh with one therapist or you may need to look around. The same thing with any kind of provider. They are there for you and them relationship, right? It's a mutual beneficial relationship that you have to like fill that. So I
Mhm.
think just spreading that, like, yes, you can ask for a different provider.
Yeah.
That's not a bad thing. They're not going to take that personal.
Yeah, no,
Yeah.
that you absolutely can. And I think just a lot of people just don't realize that. They think that when they start at, 10 weeks or whatever, they have to just stick with this provider. Like, okay, I'm not crazy about it, but whatever, like it'll be fine. No, you should have a good relationship with your provider, and you should find somebody who you can say, like, I really feel like I'm getting good care, because that is so, so important and it makes such a difference. I will say another good thing is including your support people in this, because a lot of times those are the people who start to see these red flags before you do. I know my husband, for instance, it wasn't a surprise to him when I came downstairs and I was like, I feel like I need to talk to somebody, about this. He's already seeing red flags, right? So including your support people in decisions that you make during your pregnancy, have them come to some of your visits. And yeah, I feel like that's obviously also a huge thing, just because they sometimes are the first ones to kind of see the changes.
Yeah,
100%.
definitely.
Well, before we end, we want to make sure we touch on for our moms. You have the best like birthing prep, labor prep. How's the best way for them to connect with you besides Instagram, obviously? I know you have a podcast.
I do. Yes, it's the Mommy Labor Nurse podcast, just wherever you listen to your podcast. And yeah, I'm mostly on Instagram. I would say that's the platform that I'm most on. My stories every day, and I post on the feed every day. It's just at Mommy.labornurse on there. And then that's the same handle on TikTok. I'm doing the TikTok thing too. And then, spoiler alert, we're going to start probably a YouTube channel soon. So I can't give
Okay.
yeah, it's just the
Cool.
mommy. We're out there and we're posting shorts. We're going to start posting long form videos kind of later this year. So excited to kind of get that started. So it's just Mommy Labor Nurse on YouTube, and you'll find us. Like I said, there's just the YouTube shorts on there now. So it's basically the same videos that are on Instagram. So yeah, the podcast, Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, and then the blog. So we've got Mommy.labornurse.com, and that's where we have all of our online birth classes. We've got 3 different kinds. One for moms who want to go a little bit more, natural, unmedicated. It's more tailored to that mom. And then we've got one called the epidural series that's more tailored to moms who are like, I'm pretty sure I want to get an epidural. And the good thing about our classes too is if you go into one of them and you say, you know what, I think I kind of want to get an epidural or kind of interested in that natural thing, and just email us and be like, hey, can I switch my class? And we'll switch you, no problem. It's not like you have to buy another class. And then we've got the C-section series too, which we were really excited to come out with, because there really are no C-section birth classes. And a C-section is birth, and there's a lot of things that you need to know about your C-section before you go into, it's like
A lot.
it's not just like if you are planning on having a scheduled C-section, you don't have to take any sort of educational course. Like it's fine. No, like there's a lot that you can learn, and a lot of recovery kind of stuff that you can learn. So we put that one out last year, and we got a lot of people who were excited about that, because there's nothing there for those moms. We have obviously education in our other 2 birth classes about unplanned C-sections, emergency C-sections, because those obviously happen too. But yeah, we were leaving out the moms who have scheduled C-sections, maybe because their baby was breech, or they had a Previa, or like some kind of medical reason, and they'd never had a C-section before. Hey, we got to get some education there too. So that's where our birth classes are. And we have a whole blog, lots of blog articles on mommylabornurse.com that are just free to read. So yeah, that's where you can find me.
We love that. We love
Absolutely.
connecting our listeners to trusted resources who are trying to like educate our moms. And we always say, like, if the system will not, then it's up to us, right?
That's exactly right. And that's why I started this whole thing, because I feel like there is this gap in education. I would see patients come in to labor and not taking any birth courses. I'd have some who take birth courses, and you see the difference of people who come in and have
Yes.
education about what's about to happen to them. Their anxiety is just a lot better. Not to say that things might happen that they weren't expecting, but when you have that education, you're not only less anxious, but if something like that does happen, you're usually able to come away from it and not have it be this traumatic experience that just happened to you. So yeah, that's why I've kind of started my whole thing, because I really felt like there was a gap.
We love
I
that.
love it.
We're cheering you on, and thank you for.
Thanks.
I wish I would have known about your C-section thing. I had Previa of my first, so like I knew I had to have a C-section.
Yeah.
And like you said, I had no clue. Which granted, mine ended up being emergent general anesthesia, but like I would have liked just to know what the after process was,
Right.
or. And then when I had James, my second, it was a schedule that ended up to be a C-HIST, but
Oh gosh.
I had, we've got a whole, if you ever want to hear a whole saga of the traumatic birth, we got you on this,
I will
unfortunately.
go
But
back and listen. Yeah, that sounds crazy.
it was very crazy experiences, but I was never an OR nurse. So to me, even like being
Yeah.
there for my second C-section, looking around, that was really scary to me.
Yeah.
And like, I was like, oh my gosh, what is this? So thank you so much for doing that, because like even nurses or healthcare providers, right? Like if you're not in the OR every day, it's scary. I'm sorry for
Yeah,
everybody.
it's different. It's a totally different environment.
Yeah. And you're just
Not
like,
all
what's
nursing
happening?
is the same.
No.
No. But they're like, you're a nurse. And I'm like, I do not do OR. Like, this is really, the room was scary. It was cold. Like, you're strapped down. So, like, I think you alone just putting that out there is going to help so many moms.
Huge.
Like you said, anxiety and just feeling like some control, right? Because
Yeah.
Whitney, what do you always tell me about anxiety and control? What do I try to do? I control everything.
Over situations, our anxiety is going to spike. And so just like, you had mentioned a second ago, like if the system isn't going to educate the moms, then we're going to take this into our control and educate these moms and empower them. So we are controlling the controllable.
Mm-hmm. That's right.
And that helps my type A1 self feel really good.
Yeah.
Well, you have been a joy. We're going to direct, we'll link everything. And we're cheering you on. We're happy to be in the space with you. And anything we can do to help, as we said, if they're not going to fix it, we're going to fix it.
That's right.
Well, we're here to help and be a part of it with you.
Yeah, that's right. Well, thanks so much for having me on.
Thanks, guys. All right, guys. Till next time. Maternal mental health is as important as physical health. The Previa Alliance podcast was created for and by moms dealing with postpartum depression in all its variables, like anxiety, anger, and even apathy. Hosted by CEO, founder Sarah Parkhurst, and licensed clinical social worker Whitney Gay, each episode focuses on specific issues relevant to pregnancy and postpartum. Join us and hear how other moms have overcome mental health challenges, as well as access tips and suggestions on dealing with your own challenges as moms. You can also browse our podcast library and listen to previous episodes at any time. Please know you're not alone on this journey. We're here to help.